The emergency siren echoed across the massive American Public Library just before every electronic exit locked automatically. Visitors looked around in confusion until a terrified woman screamed that her 9-year-old son had disappeared between the bookshelves. Within seconds, the peaceful library transformed into complete panic. Marcus Red quietly closed the book he had been reading and immediately stood up. He noticed librarians running toward different floors, while security guards blocked every exit. The child could not have left the building, yet nobody had any idea where he had gone. The boy's mother kept shouting his name through the silent reading hall. Children started crying as adults searched behind shelves, study rooms, elevators, and restrooms. Every passing minute increased the fear that something terrible had happened inside the library. Marcus walked toward a librarian and calmly asked where the maintenance passages were located. Before the librarian answered, a middle-aged visitor suddenly pointed at Marcus and loudly claimed he had seen the black man talking to the missing child earlier. The entire reading hall became silent. Everyone slowly looked toward Marcus. The frightened mother stepped backward while 2 security officers approached him. Marcus remained calm because he already knew how quickly fear could become suspicion when facts were still missing. Marcus explained that the little boy simply asked where the history section was located. He pointed toward the correct shelf and continued reading his own book. The conversation lasted less than 15 seconds, yet people already imagined something far more dangerous. Security escorted Marcus into a small office. Instead of continuing the search, the officers politely questioned him about every detail, while valuable minutes disappeared. Marcus answered honestly, but he kept glancing toward the building map hanging on the office wall. Suddenly Marcus noticed something unusual on the map. The history section shared a hidden archive corridor used only by employees. Earlier that morning, he remembered seeing workers repairing an automatic archive door near that exact location. Marcus immediately stood up and pointed toward the archive corridor. He told the officers they were searching the wrong part of the library. The officers hesitated because nobody believed a visitor knew the building better than trained security employees. Marcus finally convinced one librarian to check the maintenance records. Within seconds, she confirmed that the archive door had malfunctioned twice during the previous week. The lead officer immediately ordered every nearby employee to search the restricted archive corridor. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and entered the narrow hallway with 2 officers following behind him. Thick shelves filled with old documents surrounded them while emergency lights blinked across the dark concrete passage beneath the library. Everything remained silent until Marcus heard a faint crying voice somewhere behind a heavy steel archive door. He quickly followed the sound, forced the emergency release lever downward, and slowly pulled open the massive security door blocking the hidden room. The missing boy sat inside hugging his backpack while crying quietly. The automatic door had locked behind him after he wandered inside searching for an old dinosaur book displayed through the archive window. He had been trapped without anyone hearing him. Marcus gently carried the frightened child back into the main library hall. The mother immediately ran forward and hugged her son with uncontrollable tears. Visitors watched silently as relief replaced panic throughout the entire building within only a few emotional seconds. Then the little boy looked toward Marcus and smiled. He told everyone that Marcus had been kind earlier and even reminded him to stay close to his mother because libraries were very large. The entire room became completely silent. Security quickly reviewed the surveillance footage. Every camera confirmed Marcus only helped the child before walking away. Another camera clearly showed the boy entering the archive corridor alone after becoming curious about the rare book collection displayed behind glass. The visitor who accused Marcus slowly lowered his head. The lead officer removed his cap and sincerely apologized. Marcus accepted the apology quietly, but then looked around the crowded library before speaking only one calm sentence. "You spent almost 30 minutes questioning me while the child waited behind one locked door." Nobody answered because everyone knew he was right. The boy walked toward Marcus, holding a small bookmark shaped like a dinosaur. He smiled and placed it inside Marcus's hand before quietly saying that heroes should always remember where good stories begin. Marcus smiled, placed the bookmark safely inside his wallet, and walked toward the library exit. Behind him, hundreds of visitors returned to reading books, but nobody forgot the lesson they learned that afternoon. Fear created a suspect in less than 1 minute. Truth needed half an hour. Kindness had been standing there the entire time. Marcus walked only a few steps before he heard someone calling his name from behind. It was the little boy. He had broken away from his mother's hand and ran across the library lobby carrying another small book. His face finally showed a smile instead of fear, and everyone quietly watched him stop in front of Marcus. The boy held up the book with both hands. "I want you to have this." Marcus looked at the cover. It was a small children's book about explorers discovering hidden places. Marcus smiled warmly. "That's your book?" The boy nodded. "I know. Then why are you giving it to me?" The little boy shrugged. "Because you found me." Marcus gently closed the book and handed it back. "You keep it." The boy looked disappointed, But I want you to remember me. Marcus laughed softly. I don't need a book for that. The little boy smiled again and hugged the book tightly against his chest. Across the lobby, the boy's mother slowly walked toward Marcus. Her eyes were still red from crying. She stopped a few feet away before speaking. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. Marcus looked at her calmly. For what? She took a deep breath. For believing them. Marcus remained silent. The woman continued. When that man pointed at you, she looked down. I didn't even ask one question. Marcus nodded slowly. You were scared. She immediately shook her head. I was. Then her voice became quieter. But fear isn't an excuse. Marcus respected that answer. Many people defended themselves after moments like these. She wasn't trying to. She was accepting responsibility. The library director walked over, carrying several maintenance reports. He placed them on a nearby table. Our staff checked every report. Marcus looked at the papers. The director sighed heavily. You reported that archive door 3 days ago. Marcus nodded. I did. The director looked embarrassed. It was marked low priority. Marcus looked toward the archive hallway. It almost became a tragedy. The director slowly lowered his head. It already became one. Marcus looked confused. The child is safe. The director nodded. Yes. Then he looked around the lobby. But trust was damaged. Nobody argued. Because everyone understood exactly what he meant. Several parents standing nearby quietly pulled their children closer. Not out of fear anymore. Out of gratitude. One elderly woman approached Marcus carrying a small shopping bag. She smiled kindly. I judged you too. Marcus looked surprised. She continued. I've spent 70 years telling myself I treat everyone equally. She looked down. Today I discovered I still have things to learn. Marcus smiled gently. We all do. The woman reached into her bag and handed him a homemade chocolate cookie wrapped in clear paper. It isn't much. Marcus accepted it politely. Thank you, she smiled. It's an apology. Marcus nodded. I accept. Meanwhile, police officers continued reviewing every camera angle inside the library. One younger officer replayed the footage several times. Finally, he walked toward Marcus. I noticed something. Marcus listened. You never once tried to defend yourself by attacking anyone else. Marcus smiled faintly. I didn't need to. The officer looked curious. Weren't you angry? Marcus thought for a moment. I was disappointed. Why disappointed? Because the child needed people searching. He looked toward the archive hallway. Instead, they were searching me. Those words stayed with the officer long after Marcus finished speaking. Outside the library, local reporters had gathered after hearing about the lockdown. Several cameras waited near the entrance. The library director asked Marcus if he would speak publicly. Marcus hesitated. He never enjoyed attention. But maybe today wasn't about him. Maybe it was about something bigger. He stepped outside. Microphones immediately surrounded him. One reporter asked the first question. How does it feel to be called a hero? Marcus smiled politely. I don't think I'm a hero. The reporter looked surprised. You saved a child. Marcus nodded. I helped. Another reporter quickly asked, what do you think about being wrongly suspected? Marcus became quiet for several seconds. Then he answered honestly. I hope people remember something. What? Marcus looked directly toward the cameras. When a child goes missing, he paused. Don't let fear choose the suspect before facts choose the truth. The reporters became silent. No dramatic speech, no anger, just one sentence. Sometimes simple words carried the greatest weight. Inside the library, the little boy watched the interview through the glass entrance. He looked at his mother. He's nice. She smiled sadly. I know. The boy frowned. Then why did everyone think he was bad? His mother knelt beside him. She searched for the right words. Finally she answered, because sometimes adults forget to look with their hearts before they look with their fears. The little boy thought carefully. I won't do that. His mother hugged him tightly. I hope not. A few minutes later, the reporters packed up their equipment. The crowd slowly disappeared. The library finally returned to its usual peaceful silence. Marcus walked back inside one last time to collect his backpack. The librarian who first answered the emergency alarm approached him, holding the library card. We'd like to offer you lifetime membership. Marcus smiled. I already have one. The librarian laughed softly. I forgot. Marcus placed his backpack over one shoulder. Before leaving, he looked around the building. Children had returned to reading. Parents sat quietly beside them. The fear had disappeared. Only the lesson remained. As Marcus reached the exit, the little boy ran toward him one final time. He handed Marcus something very small. A simple dinosaur bookmark. This one isn't my favorite. Marcus smiled. So I can keep it. The boy nodded excitedly. Yes. Marcus carefully placed the bookmark inside his wallet. I'll keep it safe. The little boy grinned. So you'll remember me. Marcus looked down at him. I'll remember today. The boy smiled. Me too. Marcus stepped outside into the cool afternoon air. Sunlight finally broke through the clouds above the city. He stood quietly on the library steps for a moment before walking toward his car. Inside his wallet rested a small dinosaur bookmark. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't valuable, but to Marcus it represented something much bigger. A child who saw kindness instead of color. A mother who found the courage to admit she was wrong. A police officer who learned that suspicion is never evidence. A library director who promised never to ignore another safety warning. And a building full of strangers who discovered how quickly fear can write a false story. Marcus unlocked his car and looked back one final time. The library stood peacefully beneath the afternoon sun. Families entered with smiles. Children carried books. Life had returned to normal, but Marcus knew the people inside would never forget that day, because sometimes the most important story in a library isn't the one printed inside a book, it's the one people choose to write about each other. That afternoon, Fear wrote the first chapter, Truth wrote the last one, and the ending reminded everyone that character is never determined by the color of someone's skin, but by what they choose to do when another human being needs help.